Personal story segment tonight, Dr. Ben Carson becoming a very controversial guy. A few months ago on The Factor, he told us how the IRS was auditing him, unfairly in his opinion. Now the doctor's making the issue of government control a crusade.
There comes a time when people with values simply have to stand up. Think about Nazi Germany. Most of those people did not believe in what Hitler was doing.
Yep.
But did they speak up?
Nope.
Did they stand up for what they believed? They did
Very
not.
few.
And you saw what happened. And if you believe that the same thing can't happen again, you're very wrong.
And joining us now from Virginia Beach is Dr. Carson. So if you mention Nazis, you know you're going to get hammered. But what you said right at the end there intrigued me a bit. You said if you believe it can't happen again. See, I don't believe that Nazism could happen in the USA. I don't think it could happen, nor could communism happen here. Do you disagree with me?
Well, I believe that what can happen is if people do not speak up for what they believe, they can be trampled. Their rights can be trampled to various and sundry degrees. Now, of course, the objective of many on the left is to take a single word that you're not supposed to say. You can't say Nazis, you can't say slavery. That's political correctness. As you well know, I do not believe in that. I think it's a bunch of crap, and it doesn't really belong in the American system where we have freedom of speech and freedom of expression.
You don't regret using the buzzword Nazi. And what you pointed to historically is correct. What you said is absolutely correct. I mean, the German people, the mass of Germans, were not members of the Nazi Party, and they just sat on their butts and they allowed the fanatics to take over. That could not happen here because of our system and checks and balances. But I think what you're worried about is the Obama administration's policies in general taking root. Is that what you're worried about?
Well, there are a couple of things that I'm worried about. I'm worried about the fact that the populace is being silent and is not expressing what they believe because they're afraid. They've been intimidated.
By whom?
By the government.
How?
By the government and by the media, by the PC police. You say something, all of a sudden, like, this is a perfect example. You know, you're using an example of how people would not speak up. They try to turn the argument away from that because they know it's true. They know what I'm saying is true. But rather than talk about that, they want to divert the issue to something else. You couple that with the fact that our Congress needs to be a little more courageous, because the reason we have a divided government is if one branch of the government gets a little bit over exuberant, they need to rein them in. We need courage there in order to do that.
All right, but politicians encourage, I mean, we're not seeing a lot, you know, that, you know. But look, the last time you were on this, well, maybe not the last time, but one in the fall, you said, look, that you were bothered by the IRS to an extent that you felt they were trying to intimidate you. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't think it is coincidental.
All right, so that's the government agency that you can point to in your life, Dr. Carson's life, that you believe was put upon you to shut you up.
And it's not just me. We have a fact that we now have a government that is trying to take over the health care of the populace. And in charge of the agency, or overseeing it, is the IRS. Now, why would you put the IRS, which is under investigation already for inappropriate behavior, over something so massive and that affects so many of our lives?
Well, they're the enforcement agency of fines. Because it was ruled a tax by the Supreme Court, foolishly. And so somebody has to enforce the taxation element, and that's the IRS. So on paper, it makes sense. But you heard the President of the United States tell me, your humble correspondent, there's not a smidgen of corruption in the IRS. You heard that.
Right, we heard that. And that, to me, is, it strains credulity to believe that he actually believes that. But that we let people get away with it. This is what bothers me. The fact that the Congress doesn't stand up and say, no, you may not implement this program because a major portion of it is still under investigation, and we are not done with that. We don't do that in regular life. We don't take somebody who's under suspicion and put them in charge of something major like that. We have to just start doing things that are logical and that make sense again.
All right, Doctor, we appreciate it as always. Thank you. Directly ahead.